Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas. Joined as always by former NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is a Super Bowl winner. We haven't seen one of those around here in quite a while. Brian's got one. Brian is a Super Bowl winner. He's also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. And he is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. Brian, how are you? How's it going?
I'm doing well, Robert. I think you and I are going to open this podcast. Both have watched the tape and both kind of feeling like it wasn't as bad as it was in person.
Yeah. Oh, I had, and we do a segment on Tuesday mornings on Sean and RJ called Post-Game Clarity, which is whenever we have our certain takeaways right after the game and I've got certain ideas, then basically I come back Tuesday and say, after watching the tape, like, here's the list of things that I feel differently about.
Right.
And there was a lot of different things that I felt, there were several things that I felt differently about. I still think you put a bad performance on the field overall.
Sure.
And I think that there are a lot of things to be concerned about as it stands right now for the Cowboys. But I will say, if you want a little bit of optimism, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I will say this, Robert. I thought the Saints game on tape was far worse.
In terms of just being beaten, like, by the other team, just beating you down, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
This one was worse, I think, in just your own lack of attention to detail and your own issues, filling. I mean, we can jump right into the biggest takeaways. I guess, Brian, for me, I'll just jump out with the first thing that stood out to me. The second level defenders were awful in this game.
Yeah.
And I think Mozzie Smith was a mixed bag, which is better than I thought it was watching it live. I thought it was awful live.
Very fair.
And there were still moments where it's like he's just providing no resistance. He's just getting completely moved out of his gap. But as the game wore on, he fought. He didn't get ejected, and he played good football in like the last 3 drives that the Ravens had.
Yeah.
So there's some good stuff there, but man, DeMarvion Overshown was bad in this game. Donovan Wilson, I think, was bad in this game.
Yep.
Even Eric Kendricks. I don't know about you, Brian. When I was watching Kendricks, I saw a guy who it just seemed was like half a second late on his keys on some of the stuff where it's just like he was a little late getting to the outside, and he can't have that at this stage of his career. At this stage of his career, it's all about his IQ, processing it fast, and being able to be a step ahead so he kind of counteracts that lack of a first step, that lack of burst that he doesn't have anymore. When it's not there, when he's not seeing it quickly enough, it looks like that. It looks like 290 rushing yards or whatever it was, 274.
Right.
That's what you end up with. So I don't know about you, Brian. That was my biggest takeaway. Was I thought second level defenders, whether box safeties or linebackers, they were awful.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Bob, on your assessment. I think the thing that makes it so difficult to play the Ravens is their quarterback.
Yeah.
He puts so much stress, and for them to go out, and the Ravens have a nice history of going out and getting big physical backs. They're one of the teams that kind of understand that, and and Henry was ready to play. He's a physical runner. He made you miss, and when you had a chance to bring him down in the hole, you weren't able to do that. There were bad angles. There were overruns. There was such a I'm going to say just a desire or almost a panic of when the ball got to the edge of everybody having to run to get to the edge, that there were cutbacks. There were opportunities for cutbacks, and Kendricks and Overshown and Wilson. I mean, everybody was flying, and when you're flying, and say you're getting pushed by the hole or you're getting blocked, or you have a chance. There were a lot of, and just watching the tape, there were a lot of like 3-yard gains where it was done the right way. Like you're going, okay, done the right way. But this quarterback, he stresses you so bad that final 10-yard run that he had to seal the game was it was a thing of beauty. It's exactly what they had to have.
Yeah.
And it was everything about what you were just talking about. Kendrick's, if you look at the end zone copy, which I know you did, Kendrick's eyes is looking at Flowers coming across. I mean, he's watching, and then the next thing you know, he looks back and now the ball's inside of him, but the damage has already been done. They've got their first down and away they go. But they test you. I thought the Saints game was a far more physical beating than this one was. But still, the damage was done. I'm sure we'll get into the Cowboys offense a little bit, but the Ravens are the Ravens, and they'll let you come back in games. We interviewed Rod Woodson in the pregame show yesterday, and I brought that up, and he's like, "Oh, we'll have trouble finishing sometimes here," and sure enough, that's, you almost snatched a victory from the jaws of defeat yesterday.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like I said, when we talk about it was better than we had anticipated it wasn't the same style of beating. Make no mistake, the Cowboys.
Oh, it's a beating. It's a beating, but it wasn't the every time you look up, it was 2nd and 1. That Saints game, it just, third down conversions, don't need them. First down run, second down run, first down run, second down run, first down pass, second down run. It just never got to third down.
Yeah.
And this was, I'm not trying to soft sell this thing, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to tell you, though, you had some opportunities to make some plays in the hole, and you didn't make plays. Or you let the ball cut back, or you let a blocker get into you a little bit more than you should have.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Now, Mozzie, like we mentioned a couple different times, he's not showing.
I thought he played better. I mean, if you talk about,
he did.
If you talk about Mozzie Smith, best game as a Dallas Cowboy, and I know you're going to say, it was 3 drives or so, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that Mozzie Smith, he gave me some encouragement that, okay, if he plays with effort, if he tries to use some of his power, if he doesn't get off the ball late, when he gets off the ball late, he is used to nobody. That's what happens to Linville Joseph now. Yeah. Linville Joseph is laid off the ball and they hook him. There's no movement for him laterally to make blockers have to take him on that way. He is a pop up, get blocked, and the guard is at the second level. There's nothing. You talk about, hey, hold up blocks. There were a couple of times where I felt like Mozzie actually held up his end. I didn't think that Oso Digizuwa was pretty bad in this game. My problems were what was going on at linebacker and then some of the safety play. And it's unfortunate what happened to Carson on the Nelson Aguilar play, because after that, Carson was a tackler. He was a tackler in this game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Carson made he had one where he had come up, he like worked through the trash on one on the sideline and made a nice like spear to like really hit somebody. And then he had the one in the red zone where he wrapped up in space. That's good. Carson still, the problem with Carson is not physicality or eagerness or anything else. He takes some bad angles. He takes just some really bad reads in like not only reads, when it comes to the ball, like, trying to get a jump on the quarterback, but also just on like trying to take an angle to tackle somebody. I think those are going to be growing pains that he'll get out of and he'll learn. And the more football you spend, or the more time you spend on a football field, the more you're going to get a feel for some of that stuff. And it's going to become a little natural. But right now, it has cost them some yards after the catch or yards after contact in the case of running.
Yeah, there's, you mentioned the growing pains, and now we're about to be into week 4, and you've got another rookie for the Giants that's going to be a factor, with what they're going to throw at you. I found it very interesting that they didn't attack him on the third down play. They went at Diggs. is what,
Flowers.
and Diggs is, Diggs is probably kicking himself in the rear a little bit. That's a play that he can make. That's an out route.
Who did they? Was that Bateman? They motioned on that play that Diggs signaled to Carson to take.
Yeah,
I think even if Flowers didn't get him, I'm trying to remember. I think Bateman had it too.
yeah.
Like I think on those route concepts, Bateman looked like he had the first down if they wanted to go that way too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they got the ball out quick, and he made a hell of a play. I mean, Diggs was trying to drive and rally on it, but it didn't work out that way. And unfortunately for the Cowboys, they needed a few more stops.
Yeah.
And they needed, I don't know. There's so many things you could kind of go through in this game. I know I found it very interesting, and I don't want to take this thing too far off the tracks, Bobby, but McCarthy going forward on the 2-point conversions.
I didn't have a problem with it because for me, I want to know what I need. Once you're in the fourth quarter, it's like I want to know what exactly I need to get and plan accordingly.
The metrics, and I think I'm reading this right from my next gen NFL stuff, and that's what the NFL teams get. This isn't stuff you can purchase. This is what it's a
portal that they provide to teams.
28-12 was a 35% go for the 2-point play. 28 to 18 was only a 17% go for it on the 2-point play.
Yeah, I'm guessing because the way they look at that, I would guess is because the idea of whatever the success rate would be on 2-point conversions, getting 2-point conversions versus just like getting the.
I'm always interested in stuff like that. I'm trying to learn about analytics. Maybe I'm trying to learn too much.
No, it's good stuff.
I was also curious.
There's no such thing as more as much information as you can get. There's no too much.
I was curious too. The 4th and 15. To me, why did it seem like kick the field goal there? I know it would have been a 58-yard field goal, something like that.
Which is about like an extra point for this kicker.
That's anytime you get to there used to be a kicker for the Saints called Morton Anderson.
Yeah,
and every
one of 2 pure kickers in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Jan Stenerud.
There you go. The only MVP.
Don't mess with me
and
kickers. Yeah, don't mess with me and kickers.
There's gonna be a third with Vinatieri.
Yeah, but Vinatieri this year. You're right about that. The thing about with the fourth, I think he's trying to maybe get some momentum. But to me, taking points, I don't know. I mean, it's after they probably had a chance at the play. I mean, Cooks had to interfere because because the pressure got there, and it was unfortunate on that play. The blocking wasn't exactly what it needed to be, and now you get pressure. That was our guy Tyler Smith. I don't think Tyler Smith played a particularly great game. I don't think Zach Martin played a particularly great game.
First thing that jumped out to me from this game, Brian, was Tyler Smith had a harder time than I thought watching it live. Travis Jones gave him problems.
Travis Jones is a good player.
Travis Jones is a good player. That's a guy that you were a big fan of during the draft show.
I was.
And man, he gave him problems. Michael Pierce, a couple reps, gave him a lot of problems.
Michael Pierce's 350 pounds of nightmarish blocking is what goes on with that man.
Just a bunch of trouble there with Tyler Smith. And you know what? Also, I think people are forgetting a little bit about, of course, CeeDee Lamb, the fumble. That's big. That's on him. People got to remember what preceded that was a Tyler Smith holding call that then backed it up. They then run the concept to CD, and he fumbles. They were inside the 10-yard line. You don't have the CD fumble in all likelihood if that Tyler Smith holding call doesn't happen.
There was a couple of times where and coming out of that stadium, I kind of felt like that maybe Steele and Guyton had issues.
I thought Guyton was much better watching it back. Steele
much better. Both of them, where they had their problems was inside, and with BB was just a little bit too involved with the twist stunts. Like he's trying to carry his guy to the guard, instead of just punching and passing and then be ready for the loop. Yeah. He got caught on the guy trying to carry him over too much. You just got to punch that thing over and then be in position to pick up the looper coming around. And there was a couple of times where they caught him, way too far on into the block. And
I want to give a ton of credit, by the way, because I think you're right. That was a big deal with BB. BB struggled. The interior struggled a lot.
Yeah,
BB, Smith, Martin, it was not great. Tyler Smith, that was a lot of trouble. Like in the run game, pass protection, it was all difficult for him. But I want to give credit to not only did Tyler Guyton play better than I initially thought.
Did.
He got beat a couple times, but not consistently.
Not at all.
The thing that really impressed me with Guyton, and it's something we've talked about here recently, did you notice the couple times the communication between him and Tyler Smith on some of the twists and the stunts, like you were just talking about with BB? There were a couple different times where you saw Guyton really communicating well and like picking up his guy. I thought that looked much smoother this week,
Cleaner.
And that's the type of progress and building that like you want to see from somebody of Tyler Guyton's experience.
Yeah, it's amazing that your two Pro Bowl guards are the ones that struggle. But we knew that the inside, the inside for the Ravens was a difficult group. The power they play with, they haven't had the pass rush in the first two games, but they caused some problems in this game. It was very clear that they were able to kind of take advantage of some things in the middle of their defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, I think that while there were some issues with the pass rush in terms of the pass protection at times, it wasn't crippling, and it shouldn't have been crippling. Brian, one of the takeaways that I have watching these last couple weeks, the offense has started really some weird pass concepts that they're trying to get into.
What's up with the first 15 in these games?
I don't know, because I mean, New Orleans and the Baltimore game, we're talking about like just trying to, all right, let's throw a little flare to the backfield and then hand off, and that like they don't want to push any. It's not even to the sticks. It's a bunch of route concepts that it's just, hey, let's pick up 2 to 3 yards. Like we'll take a profit. Anything.
First play of the game was basically like it was why spot is what it was. I mean, you watch Ferguson come off the ball, he just kind of hooks, and then the next thing you know, they're throwing the ball to the flat, but everything was right at like 5 yards, and it was like it kind of reminded me of Mike Holmgren back in the day getting Brett Favre an easy throw, because if you didn't give him an easy throw, he would throw it into row 7 if you tried, because he was so hyped up for a game. So it looked like they were trying to get Dak some easy throws, and the one
not just Dak, not Dak easy throws. It also felt like a little bit like, I mean, there definitely was a concern. It felt like let's work Cooks in. Let's get him into a rhythm.
See, to me, the thing with Cooks, I kind of felt like the matchup with him and Stevens, Stevens was pretty, like one that they could win. And they went that direction a couple different times. I thought they could have done that more. I thought that they really, they started playing, and then all of a sudden, they were taking advantage, of Nate Wiggins. I mean, this is what I don't like about the Cowboys at times, and maybe the scheme. And why am and you and I are just guys with, as my guy Vosh Lombardi likes to say, couple guys with microphones and a camera. We're just here talking. But it just bothers me when you watch and you're thinking, our guy's better than that guy. Our guy's better than that guy. We have to take advantage of this guy. It's like when Micah rushed over Falalele, Falalele. And when he rushed over him, what happened? Pressure.
Yep.
Pressure. They got pressure there. It forced a bad pass. That's a slow-footed big guy, and put quickness on him. Why am I watching tape and saying that's a guy you need to attack? Put your biggest, quickest guy over him and let it go. Let it rip. Why? And it bothers me that they don't take advantage of certain players. And I know they do advanced scouting, and the scouts probably tell them, hey, this guy is not very good, or this guy struggles with this. And then you come out and you don't, and you just let guys off the hook. They let Brandon Stevens off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they let Nate Wiggins off the hook. You know, there was times they could have probably attacked Humphrey. I'm not going to do it all the times. You know, how did Kansas City get Roquan Smith into coverage a bunch on the tight? And you know, how did they do that? Why can't you do the same thing? It bothers me a lot, and it should bother Cowboy fans because it's not about being creative. It's about, hey, who is their weakest link? Go find that guy and take advantage of him.
Yeah. Now, two more things I want to touch on really quickly or get your thoughts on before we transition over to the next segment. First one, Micah Parsons has not made a bunch of splashy plays. This game obviously was not one where he could just pin his ears back and rush. Brian, would you agree with what I feel like I've seen early on, that even though it's not splashy, I think this is as assignment sound as I've ever seen Micah play? Like, Micah is doing exactly what it seems to me like Zimmer really effectively sold him on. You do your job and everybody does their jobs and it all runs. Mike has really been preaching that. And I think the frustration he's pouring out is feeling what happens when one guy isn't doing his responsibility. And something that Micah often, as good as he is, was doing to guys in the past. And I think now it's a little bit like, yeah, Micah, this is what people have been talking about where there have been busts. And it's like, you can't just hang people out to dry. He's getting really frustrated. But I think in terms of being disciplined and playing really assignment sound, I think this is as disciplined as I've seen Micah play within a scheme.
The thing that I'm trying to pay attention to with Micah, and this is, if I could circle back what you just said, Bob.
Yeah.
You were there in the locker room. You were there amongst them after that one.
Mm-hmm.
On the podium, Mike McCarthy starts to talk about preparation. Dak Prescott talks about being a pro. Maybe he was addressing CeeDee Lamb in that way, but he's talking about preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Tank Lawrence talking about preparation. Micah, everybody's talking about preparation and what you needed to do. When you play the Ravens, you need an extreme amount of discipline to deal with their offense. You really, really do. Mm-hmm. You need good players, but you need to be assignment sound. The thing that I don't know about Micah, Bobby, and this is the advantage that I no longer have being in the building.
Yep.
Is when Micah goes crashing down inside, scheme thing or Micah trying to make a play. Because we see Micah crash, we see Micah play wide, then get paralyzed, where he stops. We've seen it a couple of different times with Hurts when they play the Eagles. Now, when you play Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I do believe that Micah is better than what he's done in the past with his assignments and stuff, and maybe not freelancing as much. But I wonder, when he plays as that crash end on that scheme, is there supposed to be a linebacker behind you? Is there supposed to be a safety behind you? Who's the fill guy? Because that happened quite a bit with him and Tank, both just taking, and I don't know if they're guessing or gambling or it's really just part of what they're doing. It might be a scheme thing, but they're not replacing the guy that's crashing. There's nobody there to take when you play crash end and all of a sudden, that quarterback pulls the ball and there's nobody on the edge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That bothers me. There used to be a time where you used to be able to walk down the hall. And I guarantee people right now are like, well, damn, Brian, you got Zimmer's phone number. Why don't you just text him and ask him? Last thing he wants to do is hear from me talking about crash ends and stuff like that. I'm just curious. I'm just curious, is Micah doing exactly what he's supposed to do? I think there's a pretty damn good chance that's the case.
I think based on the way we see the linebackers reacting and looking like they're just late, it looks to me like most of the time it's scrape exchange, like it's gap replacement, and they're not getting there in time.
They're not getting there in time. I want to believe that because I do feel like it happens on both sides. And I don't think Tank is a little bit of a gambler.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you see these guys go crashing inside, and it's kind of a damned if you do and damned you don't. And what happens is you crash inside and you don't play the ball. You get the ball, then all of a sudden it gets pulled, and that guy is off and running for 17 yards.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Let's take a quick break here. I need to remind you guys that you're listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, before we completely transition out of this game and tackle some of the tension that seems to exist at the Star right now, really quickly, summary on what you thought overall from Dak Prescott, watching it back. I thought came away feeling like he played better than I initially thought.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like timid early.
Yeah.
But I mean, legitimately, late in that fourth quarter, made some really
Clutch
nice
throws. Yeah.
And I mean, there was the first one, I think it was in the first half, the CD catch on Wiggins on the sideline. That's a beautiful, trust in CD, knowing where he's going to be, releasing that before he's even into his break. When people talk about anticipation, that was there on that throw. And so I thought Dak had some great throws in this one, better than the first two games we've seen, but overall still not quite what you need out of him.
No, and early in the game, and I will say this, and I think you're right with your assessment of the pass to Lamb. I think that was a beautifully thrown ball. The one that I need to kind of understand, the pass on 3rd and 7 that went to Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
Elliott is looking over the inside shoulder.
And Dak's thrown to the other. Yeah.
Yeah, and you wonder if Dak throws the ball to where you're looking, you're not getting that first down. He is not going to catch that ball and turn up. He's going to go out of bounds for like a 4-yard gain. Where Dak put the ball gave him the best opportunity to make the play and get up the field and get the first down. If the ball is any other spot, it's probably not going to be a first down. I mean, Elliott needs to catch the ball on the move up the field and then have a chance to dive for the sticks. But where he was looking, boy, it looked off, and I'd like to know.
Remember, this is Zeke's first year in this offense.
Yeah.
I mean, these other guys have gotten a lot of this down. It may be just a nuance point or a coaching point within the route, how you're supposed to run it, that he just was off on. But then again, even without that one, something's up with Dak throwing these little.
How about the balls down the field, the deep shot balls.
The deep shots are not in sync, and the swing passes and some of that stuff to the sideline short is just
do a good screen.
The screen was good. Yeah, we finally got one of those. But
and it was a great call right at that time, and you kind of needed something. It was a great call. But I mean, some of the passes were, but man, in the late in the third and through the fourth, I mean, he was on. I mean, they did a great job. The routes were really good. The separation was really good. For Lamb only to have one catch in the second half for 9 yards. I mean, everybody else stepped up in that thing. Ferguson stepped up. The blitz pickup stuff I thought was really, really good. Hunter Lipke, we keep talking about Hunter Lipke, and maybe we keep talking. We're not giving Hunter Lipke enough credit is what I'm saying.
He played really well.
Played really, really well. Man, my guy never comes off the field, it seems like. I mean, he's on offense, and then he plays every special teams.
Yeah.
He earns his letter jacket every game, the number of snaps that he plays. But they've got to get something going earlier in those games. They can't just look so inept, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, and maybe the Ravens being the Ravens, but man, and it wasn't prevent and take the foot off the gas. That's what the Ravens do.
Yeah.
The Ravens let you back in games, and Dallas almost stole one yesterday.
Yeah,
they almost stole one.
Now this has tensions pretty high right now as they are 1-2, getting ready to roll in on a short week with the Giants, which we'll preview the Giants, in the next day or two.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of tension. DeMarcus Lawrence a little frustrated after the game talking to reporters. Micah was. CeeDee Lamb didn't talk to reporters. We saw CeeDee had the exchange on the sideline. It was. CeeDee had the tense exchange on the sideline, very emotional. Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence had their interaction. So a lot of rising tension. And then on Monday, Mike McCarthy was very, very irritable during his press conference. Specifically, it kind of built up. And Nick Harris from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, formerly at DallasCowboys.com, had asked him a question about Short week, obviously you don't have a lot of time to focus on drilling down on details necessarily from this last game, but Jordan Lewis said details were a problem. Mike Parsons talked about accountability. How do you work that in? And McCarthy was about as dismissive as you can be, and said, "Boy, pretty dramatic question there, Nick. You must have sat there and practiced that."
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, Brian, I don't know about you, but when I see McCarthy up there standing there talking today, that strikes me as a guy who's starting to feel it. Yeah. And he's feeling serious pressure, and it's sort of lashing out at this point, or trying to rally an us versus them thing with the locker. Like, let me publicly show, like, they're against us. Let's rally together.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to work too hard at that because everybody's against him right now. And, Nick is one of my teammates. Nick and I have a show together, The Break, that we do Monday through Friday on DallasCowboys.com. Nick's a fine young reporter. Nick is very attention to detail. Nick has really good opinions. I really enjoy the interactions with him that I have on the show. I love working with him on the draft show like you and I do. I think he really takes a lot of care in what he's in his presentation.
Yeah,
that was unfair by Mike McCarthy.
Yep,
that's a legitimate question that needed to be answered. And Mike did a poor job of, in my opinion, being short and dismissive with everybody today. He just took a chance, not a chance. He took an unnecessary shot at Nick Harris. And there's a side of me though that always kind of thought that Mike McCarthy, was like, yeah, whatever happens, happens. Whatever happens, happens. If I don't make it, if I don't, whatever. That so be it. I kind of resuscitated my career. I won multiple games here. I didn't have playoff success. I kind of felt like that he was, going to be that way. But, I think that you and I might believe that Mike might have got a little bit of a talking to today from, the front office.
It was a big tone change from Sunday night after the game to Monday afternoon.
Big tone change, like you said. So, hey, Nick, if you're listening, brother, keep asking questions like that, as is all the guys and gals in that room. Keep asking questions because, and you're going to get the opportunity on your show to talk to Jerry Jones. And I guarantee you, Jerry Jones probably ain't going to be very happy with you. But Jerry
Jones, be an uncomfortable one.
Yeah, but Jerry Jones is the general manager. He is the general manager of the team. And if you're going to be that guy, and he knows this, he doesn't need me to tell him. I mean, I was in the league a long time, but he's been in the league just as long. I mean, even longer. But, you need to be able to handle, these questions, the good ones, the bad ones, when you're winning, when you're losing. If you're asking us to be fair, you need to be fair with us, and I think that was unfortunate what Mike did today.
Yeah, and I think not like obviously Mike is not a case where we have a lot of evidence for this just because it's not happened before, but typically Jerry's frustration, which is building, you're sensing it. He sounded frustrated.
He's an older man. We don't have many campaigns left,
Tuesday and Friday last week sounded frustrated in interviews. Sunday they come out of that game. He came out of the locker room really quickly. Felt like about 5 minutes earlier than he normally does. And was a little on edge. Had come up, said, all right, questions. And cameramen are still getting their white balances ready and doing everything else. And so nobody asked a question right away. And he went, guys, come on, questions, let's go. And then he locked it. And my experience with Jerry is when Jerry is getting publicly irritated, that's when he's grappling with the reality of this isn't what I expected. Like right. he's settling into a belief of this is not what I thought it was going to be. Right. And I think very early on, Jerry's already sensing this team might not be good enough.
Yep.
And I think it's upsetting to him.
Yep. The Saints loss was very jarring. You can understand a loss to the Ravens that is successful. Even though the Ravens were 0-2, you could understand the Saints loss and the way that happened. That got his attention. Yep. That's when all of a sudden, they chalked up the Saints game as a win. When we play that game, we get the schedule, win, loss, win, win, that kind of thing. They had that one as a W. This one was a little bit more in the balance, And,
I think we all had this as an L when we looked at the schedule.
I know on every platform I was on, I picked the Ravens 28-23. Every platform I was on. So I didn't expect him to win this game, and they almost pulled it out. But I think that Jerry Jones he said it yesterday though, Bobby. He has to look in the mirror, and he does. He talks about he's disappointed for the fans, but what I would be disappointed in is I heard my head coach talk about preparation or lack of. I heard my quarterback talk about it. I heard two of my primary quality defensive players talk about it. Those kinds of things aren't just thrown out there. Those are to send a message that, hey, we need to be better at this. And if it's not, the people I know on our show on the G-Bag Nation today, we kind of had a discussion when Jerry would make a move. History will tell you Jerry will not make a move until he feels like the team has quit on the coach. And that's, they have an incredible record, or they had an incredible record. Yesterday was a loss, but, they've had a credible record when they lose a game. And the next day, next game, how they come back. The guys play hard for Mike. Yesterday they played hard to come back in that game. It to me, it was a little bit of fool's gold. It really was a little bit of fool's gold. But Jerry's got to look at himself, and determine, how he wants this thing to. Does he want to continue on this way, or does he want to maybe make changes and try and figure some other things out?
A lot of different things to consider, and there are a lot of questions about it in our mailbag, which we're about to get to. You're listening to the Love the Star you're listening to the Love the Star podcast, the Love the Stars and Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for the Dune Julia Love the Star mailbag, where we take the thoughts, comments, questions, everything else from our dear sweet listeners, touch on the things they want to talk about. And this is a nice transition point here from what we were just talking about, Brian, and the idea of when you would make a move or anything else. And this is a question from Ted, and Ted is asking, what happens if the Cowboys just so happen to lose to the Giants?
Interesting.
Which I don't think is completely out of the question.
No,
I'm probably not going to pick the Giants, but I don't think you can count anything right now.
No, you really can't. You're not a very confident defensive team for sure. You're struggling a little bit on offense. You should have better players, but you look at what the Giants have defensively, and I'm going to get into them tonight after our show because we have the short week, and I know we got to break this thing down. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they play on defense. I'm looking forward. I have an idea what Daniel Jones is, but I wonder if you're Mike Kafka and the coordinator there with the Giants, and do you figure out how to get Daniel Jones running? Do you play some read option football? The one thing he does is he has the ability to run. We've seen him pull before and cause problems. Yep. So I think that until you prove you can stop the run, then they're going to attempt to run on you. If they lose, how did you lose? And I don't feel like that it's one of those things where we'll see about the team. I just mentioned it before. Until they quit on Mike McCarthy, they'll keep letting him coach. But if you lose the Giants, now you're looking at Pittsburgh, and then Detroit.
I mean, if you lose to the Giants, I would think you're probably 1-5 at the bye. Then rolling into San Francisco.
That's a very that very well could be the case. And then if that were to happen, if the team hasn't quit, then Jerry has to make a decision. If that's the case, like I say again, don't mean to repeat myself, then you might see Bones Fossil as your interim head coach with Mike Zimmer as defensive coordinator and then maybe Brian Schottenheimer as the OC.
Yeah, it
or
all
as
depends.
The primary play caller.
How do you I think who they pick as the interim head coach all comes down to what are you trying to accomplish with the interim coach? Are you trying to accomplish a job interview? Then I think you name Al Harris as interim head coach.
Sure.
And try out an Antonio Pierce type of experiment.
Sure.
Are you trying to just get to the end? Are you trying to run out the clock? Then maybe that's Bones. Maybe that's Shotty. if you're trying to maybe just catch a spark and like, hey, we're still going to hire somebody else, but I need somebody who's going to rally and provide us stability and give us a shot down the stretch, then it's probably Zimmer.
Yeah.
And so I think it all just kind of depends on when they make the move, if they make the move, what is it that they're trying to accomplish when they name an interim, and that'll kind of vary on who they pick. I do think it's interesting here, Brian. One of the things I will note, I don't think the Cowboys would ever make a move on a head coach if it was regular rest, if they were going into regular rest.
Yeah.
I think you're going to need a cushion day. So that would be, they're 1-5 at the bye week. Do they make a move there?
Yeah.
The other one,
let me be real honest here. I think Mike McCarthy coaches the whole season. I do. I do think he's going to coach the whole season.
Maybe it depends on how angry.
Oh, sure. No, I understand, but
sure.
Like I said, there's just the gut side of me feels like that Mike's going to coach the whole season.
I would throw out 3 dates then just to watch if like where he needs to survive. Bye week, because that's long layoff. After the Philly game, because you'll have played San Francisco, Atlanta, then Philly. Following game's a Monday night against Houston. You get the extra day there.
Yeah.
And then right after Thanksgiving against the Giants, you just load into the final month and say, you know what, we got 10 days off. We're going into the final month. Let's do it. If Mike gets past those intervals, I think he's here.
Yeah.
But those are the intervals where he probably needs to watch.
I understand. I understand what you did. It's all very plausible stuff.
Next question here. Let's go to the question from Fred Jones. Fred wants to know, the defense is a mess, but my question is, what do you suggest they do to get the offense moving? This is one of the things I wanted to mention to you earlier, Brian. Does it look like to you, with a lot of what they're calling or some of the timidity from Dak early on, does he look like a guy who doesn't trust his protection right now?
I don't know if it's trust protection. I don't know. They didn't play without Ferguson last week against the Saints. It was a lot better with him in there.
He was good.
Yeah.
Other than a false start.
I think the coach might be calling the type of game he's worried about his offensive line. That he's worried about his not tackles. He might be worried about his 2 tackles and his center is what he really might be worried about.
Yeah.
And that's why you might see some of the way the game is being called here early.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Now, is Dak, like we mentioned, does Dak always start? There was one, the sack Guyton gave up in this game. Did you notice Guyton went to pick Dak up and he kind of just jumped and like almost like rejected the pull up, like almost like he was a little frustrated, like, dude, don't get me killed out here. Yeah, I don't know but that's the vibe.
But he's got to know. I mean, he's got to know that he's got a rookie left. I mean, they've had some plug and play guys. I mean, hell, at one time there was a veteran offensive line and he was behind that line, and he probably wishes he had Ron Leary and Frederick and Free and all those Smith and all those guys. But this is going to be he knows that he's going to have to. There were some throws he made in this game that were early in that game that were terrible throws.
There's been some wobblers.
Yeah, I mean, and so he's trying to slide in the pocket. I'm not sitting there blaming him, and I know people, you attack him, the Dak Hive will get all over you about that. So, but I'm just trying to say there were some poor throws there. Offensively, they missed some opportunities early in that game yesterday.
Yeah, and I think that's there's definitely. I don't think Dak has been the problem, but Dak has not been as good as he's been in recent years.
That's true.
He's definitely struggling right now. And also, again, like I said, almost looks a little timid, doesn't seem in sync with his guys going down the field. It's a little bit odd. Next question here from Ed Schaefer. Ed says, last year I feel like it was said that Dan Quinn was asking Mozzie Smith to do things that didn't fit him well. How is this year's scheme different? Is it closer to what he was asked to do at Michigan? He showed some nice hustle, chasing 8 out of bounds, among other things on Sunday. Thanks. Well, thank you, Ed. So what are your thoughts?
2-gap, right? 2-gap at Michigan?
Yeah.
More of 2-gap system. Here he's playing more, taking the blocker, trying to get rid of the blocker, not
taking
really.
2 blockers a lot of times.
What you do with 2-gap is you get into the lineman, and then you extend, and then you look left, you look right, you find the ball, and then you disengage. That's a 2-gap scheme, and that's what he was doing at Michigan. So he's not playing in a 2-gap scheme right now. If they played an odd front or a 3-4 front and he played over the center, then you would see him play some 2-gap stuff.
Yeah, and I would say that while it doesn't mirror more what he did at Michigan, I do think it's probably going to be more classically in line with what his skill set is, what Zimmer wants to do. And so maybe you see some of that. That's the hope based on what we saw.
He did play better. He did play better in this game. He really did.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit for this. The low moments were bad. He didn't have enough.
Yeah.
But I'll say, as a guy who was questionable heading into the game, was dealing with a back issue, started out playing really poorly, and has a history of hanging his head, he fought and he performed well in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Next question here from Josh Weaver. It's only 3 games, so it's a small sample size, but who has exceeded your expectations going into the season, and who has been your biggest disappointment so far? Brian, you got an obvious one on that front?
You have one in mind, and let me think, because you're really good at. You got all this stuff. You knew what you wanted to answer.
Yeah,
probably.
I think that early on, I'm obviously, I think Dak is playing below what he's capable of, so you could qualify that one. I really expected that we weren't going to have as many issues as we've had so far with Kalen Carson, and so Carson, I think, has been a bit of a disappointment for me. In terms of a surprise, somebody who has surpassed my expectations. I think that what you've gotten so far, for the most part, from a guy like Jordan Lewis, who is an older player, been in the league a long time, undersized by a lot of people's standards, and a guy who is coming off some recent injuries. I've been happy with the steady play you've gotten from him. He had some trouble in this last game a little bit, but overall pretty steady. And then I think that I'm reminded pretty regularly that DeMarcus Lawrence is still a pretty damn good football player.
Sure.
And that guy works harder than just about anybody else out there and busts his ass. And that's something that I think has been a big positive for me is just what DeMarcus Lawrence and Jordan Lewis have done as 2 veteran players who some people have wondered if they even have it left. I've been pleased with the way that they've played.
I think the guy has been pleasantly surprising to me is Cooper Beebe for not having to play the position in the way that he's kind of stepped in. I know we talked about the twist stunts and stuff like that, but overall, I think every week he's gotten a little bit better with, probably a little bit more confident with his calls, a little bit more confident. When you watch him pass block and he gets single blocked or he has a man on his nose and he takes him, that's a pretty powerful guy right there. That's a pretty powerful guy the way he plays. And so I've really been super impressed with him for not having played the position, but he has stepped up and done some really nice things. If you want to say a disappointment a little bit in Zach Martin. And maybe the bar's been so high on Zach Martin for so many years. All-pro player, probably a Hall of Fame player. Not probably, Hall of Fame player. Yeah. You start to talk. There's been some games where you've seen cracks in the foundation a little bit.
Yeah.
And whether it's pressures, lack of sustain, he still battles, but there's times where he's just not holding his guy right on the line of scrimmage, where he's been walked back a couple of times. Guys have gotten in the pocket on him. The sustain is lacked a little bit, but that's where I kind of felt like that, but the standard for him is so high when you watch him play. That he's when he has moments where he gives up a pressure or a hit or that kind of thing, it's a little bit like, whoa, wow, was that Zach? How did that happen? So
are you at a point where, and I mean obviously we just talked about Tyler Smith had kind of a rough game, but are you at the point that I'm at where I think at this point Tyler Smith is a better player than Zach at this point?
Yeah, I think so at this point. Yeah, I think.
And so a little bit of a change into the guard there.
I'll tell you something I'm also disappointed in a little bit is Linville Joseph.
Yeah.
He just can't move anymore. He can't move, and
slowest get off time of any of the Cowboys defense.
I was hopeful that he would be able to play with a little bit more range than he's played, but that one right there looks like a liability of a player.
Let's finish up here with this question from Playballer DC, which I think is a good one just for kind of behind the scenes logistics for people to understand how the game works. The question is, how do the coaches prepare the team in the last few minutes just before they take the field? It just seems that this team is not mentally prepared and or focused. Brian, go ahead and I mean, you can take this one because we obviously know they spend a lot of time, full practice sessions and everything on 2-minute and late game tie game situations where you need a score. So in terms of particular scenarios, this might be the scenario that coaching staff spend the most time on.
Yeah. Is he talking before the game practice, or is he talking before the game?
So he's talking about like before they take the field for that drive is what it sounds like to me. So I was adding the caveat of they prep for it a ton leading up to the game.
Yeah,
so
yeah. This is where they go back. Yeah, they go back, and this is where Schottenheimer's got his play sheet out, for example, and he's going over it through Dak where Mike might be going, and they worked on 2-minute drills, or they worked on into half practices. There's just things that they kind of want to go through. Dak is really prepared the way he's ready, the way he understands what he needs to do. So it's really kind of a reminder, okay, listen, when we get into this is what we have to think about.
Yeah. And
then they'll go through like 2 or 3 plays, especially when they're about to start a drive. They might have, okay, we're going to run check with me. They'll have 2 plays ready, maybe 2 pass plays, maybe a run play, a pass play. When you get, and if you see a front, this is what we're going to do with it. And then boom, that's what you do. But yeah, it's really about just kind of going through the mental part of it. Like, these are the plays we're looking at. If we get down in the red zone or tight red zone, they're going to go for a whole nother look here. So just be ready for that. But yeah, it's stuff that they've all worked on in practice and then their meetings. And then what Schottenheimer will do, say for Dak, is just make sure he checklists those plays, maybe checks with Mike Solari, make sure that they're okay with those plays, and they'll have them blocked up.
Yeah, a lot of times, like you just said, there's so much preparation that goes into those scenarios that it's a quick reminder of, hey, this is where we're at and this is what we're doing. I think a lot of times it's not even coach preparation, though. In those moments, I think most teams expect the person that needs to be really prepping everybody going on the field is your quarterback.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that's on Dak. When you're talking about preparation, getting on the field for a final drive, they're going to lean on Dak to kind of rally the troops and talk through it. But it's definitely a scenario where there's a lot more player leadership involved in that particular aspect, I think, and player preparation than that I would put typically on a coach. Peyton Manning had an interesting quote about Kirk Cousins last week doing the 2-minute drill against Philly, where he's like, when you're into a new offense, he's like, 2-minute drill is where you're going to be most comfortable. That's where the quarterback's in control because it's basic concepts that they know from their entire career and they can just play football. So a lot of times that's very player driven. That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot to unpack, and I'm sure we'll continue to have more. And we'll take a look at the Giants and, prep for Malik Neighbors. And, God, with the way that the Cowboys have played in space, maybe we should just focus on Wan'Dale Robinson and, Tyrone Tracy on sweeps and everything else. There will be a lot to look forward to.
A lot to look forward to.
And Brian's going to get started on tonight, and we'll have some reports for you this week. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.